All right, so you probably know Central Perk, the fictional coffee shop on the incredibly internationally, globally popular show Friends. Well, you might not know Central Perk Coffee is now a real place. So, Central Perk Coffee Company is open on Times Square in New York, and it's also open on Newbury Street in Boston. So my guest today is Phil Colicchio. You probably remember Phil. He's been on the show before. But today, we're talking about his relationship as co-founder of Central Perk Coffee Company. And then, of course, he also has his own company, Colicchio Consulting, where he consults for food halls, celebrity chefs, and more. So today, we're going to be talking about Friends. We're going to be talking about coffee and the food experience. So let's get into it. Live from Los Angeles, it's Where We Buy. You're listening to Where We Buy. It's the show where we talk with retail experts and we visit the places where we buy. My name is James Cook. I research retail and real estate for JLL. Today we're recording live from the lovely, at the Sheraton Universal at the Entertainment Experience Evolution Conference in Universal City, California. Welcome back to the show, Phil.
James, it's an honor to be with you.
So the most important thing is, what do we call today's episode? Do I just call it The One with Phil?
The one with Central Perk.
Okay, The One with Central Perk. Okay, so I want to start it wherever you want to start the beginning of this story, where you said, we're going to make a coffee shop based on the Friends coffee shop. Like, how did this whole thing come about?
It's a bit of a crazy story, but I think like all origin stories, if you tell the truth about it, most people think that you're fudging. But here's the truth.
Okay.
About 5 years ago now, a good friend and colleague of mine who's based here in Los Angeles phoned me and asked me what I thought about doing a sandwich shop with my cousin Tom Colicchio, who's a very well-known chef, that was effectively based on the Friends character Joey Tribbiani. And the conceit, right?
Okay.
On any other day, I would have said, that sounds like a great idea for someone else. Tom's not going to do that. I have a lot of other things to do. But I knew at that time that my cousin Tom's his own sandwich shop, which was called Witchcraft, was having some difficulty, and he was really looking at problems with several of his leases. So I said, well, if there's a chance that maybe we could flip the leases, I was thinking like the real estate lawyer I am in my life. So I said, okay, tell me about the idea. And he says, all right, here's the idea, Phil. Joey Tribbiani, the great character from Friends, never makes it as an actor, but his love of sandwiches has led him into creating these brilliant sandwiches that have become a hit in New York City. And he said, and in my version, it's he's met Tom, and Tom has encouraged him to go into business, and Warner Brothers is going to love this. Fortunately, my colleague, his name is Dominic Sandifer. Dominic's best friend from growing up is in the general counsel's office at Warner Brothers. And he was able to get Dominic a meeting with the global themed entertainment and licensing division of Warner Brothers Studios. It was before they were Warner Brothers Discovery. Tom couldn't get out to Los Angeles. He asked me if I would go. I said I would. And we had our meeting with these honchos at Warner Brothers, something that was very easy for Dominic to do, something that I was completely foreign. It was completely foreign to me. But we led with the idea that the sandwich shop would be hospitality focused and high quality. It's the only thing I knew about the food and beverage business. I didn't know how to build a 20,000 store empire like Subway, and I didn't know how to do a Jersey Mike's thing, right? But I knew this. Dominic knew show business because of the work that he does. And the Warner Brothers folks listened politely, seemed engaged, and asked us if we'd come back the next morning. Well, we came back the next morning, and in a nutshell, they said, we like the concept a lot of the sandwich. What would you think about taking Central Perk to the market? Now, I'm not a huge fan of the show Friends. At the time it was becoming popular, my stage in life was, I have 3 kids under the age of 5. I've got a job. I've got all of the things that these people don't have, right? They don't have any of my problems. They got their own problems. But Dominic and I looked at each other and said, did they just say take Central Perk? I mean, Central Perk is a character on the show. You know, it's a location, but it is the location. And talk about having your intellectual property put in a box with a ribbon on it for you. We wouldn't have to convince anybody that poor Joey Tribbiani didn't make it as an actor. And they told us that a number of large coffee groups had come to them, pitched the idea of taking Central Perk, but that they felt so protective of that particular piece of property that they, it was sort of like love at first sight. And they heard our vision of quality and hospitality, and they said, we'd like you to take this out. So we were the dog who chases cars and caught the car, and now what the hell do we do with the car?
Okay, so we're going from a sandwich shop, which I have to admit, the backstory in that sandwich shop would be a little bit of a little difficult to explain to the customer, to this globally known brand. So what happens next?
Well, it's a license arrangement that Warner Brothers puts together for the vast majority of its intellectual property. And the way they kept referring about it to us was, like Flintstones vitamins. We have, that's out there. Hanna-Barbera is a Warner Brothers property. Okay. And somehow years ago, they licensed the Flintstones to whatever vitamin maker it was who makes Flintstones vitamins. And of course, they're as American as apple pie.
I guess I'm young, but I thought they always existed. I didn't know there was a time before Flintstones vitamins.
I mean, but the way she kept saying is, and we only do a 1-year license at a time, but we've had a license with them 1 year for 30, 40 years. Now I'm a lawyer, and I just wasn't buying that. And when they began talking about the licensing is really when, the heavy lifting started, because Warner Brothers had never before licensed their intellectual property for the purposes of bringing a food and beverage product to the market. Something that, you and I will ingest into our bodies that is not a vitamin, right? Something that could make us happy or could make us sick, right? You don't know when it's the ultimate crapshoot, right? But they had a vision. They were very supportive of us, but the license arrangement was classically a license arrangement, meaning they were not investing money. They were allowing us to use their IP exclusively, which was super important to us, over a period of time. And we pushed them as hard as we could for a lengthy license period with multiple renewals, because we were going to have to raise the money to do this. And they thought it would be easy to raise the money. And we said, no, it will be hard to raise the money, because we do not own the intellectual property and you are not going to give it to us. So investors who invest in these projects, James, as you know, professional investors think about their exit strategy at the same moment that they're thinking about making the investment. And if you don't own the intellectual property, the exit strategy is much more complicated, right? So we had to really work on creating an exit strategy story that was better than the Joey Tribbiani sandwich story, to bring investors to the table. It was a complicated process and it was heavy lifting.
So you ended up probably extending, and I don't know if you can go to the details, but get a longer than a 1-year license.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
the longest license ever issued by Warner Brothers.
Oh, wow. Wow. So now you're out pitching it to investors.
Yep.
Was it as difficult as you thought it would be?
It was. There were a few investors early who were excited by the possibility. There were an equal number of investors who said exactly what you should say. This sounds great. Call me after your 5th store is open, right? And that's what a good investor should do. If you're not ready to go in as an angel or a seed investor, you should wait for some proof of concept. There are really 3 founders to this. So there's Dominic and his group. There's Colicchio Consulting, which is Trip Schneck and myself. And the largest early investor was the John Tilley Trust that's based out here in Los Angeles. They really saw the value in this thing. So after we got the first several million raised, we did exactly what newbies would do. We made our first big mistake.
Uh-oh.
Because we had just come through COVID, we're coming through COVID, and we didn't raise as much money as we had hoped, but we raised enough. We decided that we would put a third of that money into building the brand through subscription coffee sales on the internet. Sounded like a good idea. Research that we did gave us a lot of hope. And there was a robust subscription movement going on in America at the time.
I remember it well.
Mm-hmm. So, we learned also that building that kind of business, which we had never built before, was harder than we expected. The competition for selling coffee online was fierce. The ability to get the message out required spending an awful lot of money on paid media, which none of us had ever done before other than Dominic, because his primary business involves paid media. And we got off to a really good start, but ultimately stalled. And what the idea for doing the whole project was, we'll go ahead and build this online program, and that will fund our development going forward. And aren't we smart? And, but it didn't happen that way. We still have our online presence, but it is not super strong. We're working on it. As it turns out, brick and mortar helps online better than online helps brick and mortar, right?
Phil, I've heard that before.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure I got a little retail into this for you. But so we went out in search of the right first location.
Yes. So this is the big question: where to go?
Right. And the only thing that I really knew about location finding was that this property, Central Perk and Friends, was really beloved by a whole new generation of people that were, high school and college aged. And the research, God bless Warner Brothers, the depth of research that they maintain on the global strength of the brand is extraordinary. And we made sure every investor that we pitched saw the Warner Brothers book, because to the extent you had any questions about whether Central Perk or Friends was the real deal, it would just lock it in for you. But I was of the strong opinion that you do not open a Broadway show on Broadway. Friends and Central Perk were, in the world's eye, a New York institution that didn't really exist, but was in fact a New York institution. And we set our sights on Boston because Boston fit all the categories. It was obviously a big college town. It was a big tourist town. It was a neighborhood town. It hit all of the Marks. We had a wonderful relationship with a group there that owns a lot of property on Newberry Street called, I'll give them a shout because they're terrific landlords, and that is Mike Jamin and his partner Vin at Urban Meritage Properties. Love the name. Mike's a wine collector. But Mike had a property at 205 Newberry that was formerly a Cafe Nero. It was across the street from a Zara store. Above us was the then highly popular sneaker store. It is now a Birkenstock store. But we opened there after, again, a tumultuous period of time, getting a design approved by Warner Brothers, because the design, James, is not simply a recreation or a knockoff of the set. The concept really was a modern version of what Central Perk would be if the group of friends that make up the show were sitting together today as late 20s, early 30s people. Where would they go in New York? It would be a much more hospitable environment for service, right? And also, like I said, a modern take on it. We were ultimately thrilled with the result, but getting it through Warner Brothers was a real battle because of the number of people who had opinions on it.
So forgive me, I don't know their names, but did the creators of Friends have to approve this stuff?
There's a relationship between Warner Brothers and the three creators of Friends with whom we have become friends. Yeah, that is highly, I would just say it's sensitive, meaning they work together. The creators of Friends were also the executive producers of Friends. They still have certain rights. Warner Brothers has certain rights. They have come to a unique arrangement between themselves where nothing really happens with Friends without a collaborative component, even though at any time if somebody pulled, you're not doing that card, things usually stopped. Fortunately, the creators really liked what we were doing. We had meetings with them early. They're great people. I can't say enough about them, And it was great to have their backing. What we don't have, and what we were advised to stay away from by the creators, by Warner Brothers, right, and by people who understand the television industry, we do not have the right to use the faces of the actors. So I can't have a photograph of any of them.
Like David Schwimmer isn't, his likeness, because that would be a separate license.
It is,
Okay.
and the biggest thing about Friends, if you become a historian of the show, is that there was a moment in time when the cast bonded together and said, we are going to negotiate our contract as one. Because individuals were about to take on significantly greater importance in American culture from that show. But to their credit, this group together negotiated a deal. And they rarely do anything Friends related independently. They do it all together, which means if you try to do a deal with one of them, you do a deal with 7 or 6. Each of them have their own lawyers, their own financial advisors, and all of that. So it becomes very difficult. Maybe someday when we're super successful. But we do have all of the other rights related to Friends, the show, certainly relating to Central Perk. We can use every bit of dialogue that was ever referenced in the show. There's an awful lot to mine there.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to reference and probably a lot of opportunities to name things as inside jokes from the show. And
all the coffee is, we've got the Pivot blend, we've got Gunther's espresso. There are those things sometimes, honestly, because of my background, I always worry about being over gimmicked, right? But I know that quality will win the day. So as long as those naming conventions are backed up by a quality product, I'm okay.
yeah,
Right? I do not want to trade on something that is so important to people and give them something that is a less than satisfying, right? Because I've learned that people don't like this show. People love this show. People cry when they come into Central Perk in Times Square. I have seen people cry. It's the most amazing thing you can imagine.
So you tested the concept on Newbury Street, which is a great street, but it's not Times Square.
No.
But
We made our mistakes there. I mean, that was the idea. When I say you don't open a Broadway show on Broadway, we did it. I was knowledgeable enough about the restaurant industry in New York to know that you do not get forgiven for mistakes when you make them in New York. And we knew we were going to make a lot of mistakes because this was not a concept that had been done before. So we were prepared to make grievous errors in operations.
What's the biggest thing you learned from that first location?
Oh boy. The biggest thing we learned, and that I think we're still learning, is how to deal with the guest who has a perceived notion of what they're getting into when they walk into a store like this. You know, the usual things of drainage backups, light fixtures exploding. We had this beautiful design. I was there, right? We had this beautiful design of these hanging lights. And when you're sitting at the table, the light is at the perfect height, right over the table. But when you're bringing the table in through the door and your head hits the light and smashes it, and you've just lost like $800 because you just smashed a light casing, things like that, And of course, the idea that all restaurateurs know that in the Northeast, when you budget $1 million to build your store out, you're very likely to spend $1.5 million, right? And so all of those things happen.
So I want to go back to guest expectations. Is there must be guests that go in thinking they're going to be entering the Friends experience, right? And they think that it's going to be some recreation. So how do you handle that? And is that often the case?
We've gotten very few what I would call complaints about not being the real thing. And by real thing, I mean the real fake thing.
Real recreation.
Right.
The thing that was never real to begin with.
Correct. Yeah. We got past it because the design that we did settle on was really good, right? And so there were enough Easter eggs in the design for the diehard Friends fan to feel as if their love was being returned to them. We would say very quickly, if somebody really asked about it, and some people did, we would say, look at the store. And on the show, you couldn't sell anything in it. All right. It's not the way, it doesn't work that way. It was a great environment for a set, but as a practical coffee shop, no. And so I said, we couldn't do it. So what we wanted to do was honor it as best as we could. And people seem satisfied with that. And as you pointed out, there are places they can go if they wish to visit a recreation of the set, but they're ticketed experiences. And they're not inexpensive, and you don't really get much. They offer some coffee there, and they offer some light snacks, but it's not. They're not designed as an F&B operation in any capacity.
Okay, so how did you? I guess we didn't talk about how did you find the location in Times Square? How did that all come about?
Again, good. I think it was good. A combination of good luck, relationships, and desperation. Okay? Really. So, and I'll explain it, but really the space found us when it was all said and done. First, we had raised capital to open a store in New York. It was going to happen. Finding the best location that we could find was tough. Finding lease terms that we were committed to took a lot of negotiation. We ultimately found a location that we felt was good and worthy. The lease negotiation was with a It was with a building that had a single owner, right? The building had been as a family-owned asset for many years to some New York City family. So it was their life's main asset. So we weren't dealing with a big corporate entity. They wanted everything. They wanted every kind of guarantee. They wanted guarantees from the directors of things that we weren't ready to do. But as we got closer and got the lease drafted and we were close to signing, all credit to my business partner, Trip Schneck. He just said, before we sign this, I'm going to make one more run through the hotel industry that we service in New York with Colicchio Consulting to see if anybody's willing to put this in their lobby, right? At their cost. And everybody said, okay, you got a week. And Tripp put it out there. The building that houses the Times Square Edition Hotel, which is a wonderful, wonderful high-end hotel in the heart of Times Square. One of the places we canvassed for that was there. And we'd had an existing relationship with the owners. And we asked them about the lobby there. The lobby in that building is on the 8th floor. So it wasn't going to work. But the owner said, look, I really like the idea. My kids love Friends, which is the
that always helps.
Right. But it comes back to us so many times. My kids love Friends. What would you think about taking the space downstairs? And by downstairs, he meant the semicircular space that wraps around the intersection of 47th Street and 7th Avenue on the east side.
Wow.
Now, in our wildest dreams, A, we couldn't afford that. B, we would have sought it out. But above the store is an 8-story electric signage board. And we jokingly said, do we get used to the board? And he very seriously said, well, if we work out a deal, you'll get 3 minutes an hour.
3 minutes an hour.
3 minutes.
Wow.
I'm sorry. 3 minutes. Yes. 3 minutes an hour. 3 minutes an hour.
Times Square is still a lot of money.
Right. So we said, well, we're saying to ourselves, we'll never be able to afford this. But the representative of the building owner, and I won't get into their names and IDs, but because we had a relationship, he said, shoot me a proposal. And we did, right? And it was $1 million to one shot. And we were able to work through it. And, when we signed the deal, we all about fell off our chairs because it was talk about what I said earlier, the dog who chases cars. Now we've got this car. We got an SUV, we got an Escalade. What are we going to do with this one? Fortunately, we had made most of our mistakes in Boston, right?
That's great.
So we opened up in Times Square on the 12th with an awful lot of pre-opening marketing that was really well done, helped by Warner Brothers. But we even had a live coverage from Good Morning America shot from our coffee shop the day it opened, and it ran great. We had to immediately become friends with the police in Times Square because we had the wraparound lines around the block. It opened to great happiness. And one anecdotal story that really means a ton to me. I'm not an operations person, right? But this thing blew up in such a way that all of us who were involved had to man up and work the floor. So I took on the crowd concierge role.
Okay.
So we realized we could let about a dozen people in at a time in order to keep the place sane. And we had security outside, and the door would open and we would get 10 or 12 or 15 people in from the line. And I would say to them, welcome to Central Perk. This is the first store that we've opened in New York. We're only open 24 hours. We haven't been open even a week. I hope you'll forgive us if we're a little too slow, but we're going to do our best for you. And then because I'm the guy who just won't stop there, I just say, so where are you from?
Mm-hmm.
And because people are in there and they're smiling and they're bright and you're hearing these languages spoken. I worked for about 10 hours on day 2 on the floor, and I kept a running count. I met people from 50 different countries in 10 hours on one day and 46 different states.
Wow.
Now, it was just before Christmas in Manhattan, in Times Square, during obviously a very, very historically busy travel time. But I couldn't imagine. And by the way, nobody walked in there saying, oh, I'd never heard of Friends or Central Perk. These people from 50 different countries, they knew Friends and they knew Central Perk. And they were there because they weren't going home without a Central Perk mug or some coffee or a T-shirt or a photo on the orange couch.
So, good point. You do have an orange couch, right?
Yes, we do.
Yes.
And that was also, the story in that too. The Warner Brothers owns several of them. We were able to buy them. We acquired several couches, and we now have a group that can make them to spec. So that orange couch is a replica.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Oh, and hey, is Tom Colicchio still involved at all?
He is.
Okay.
We kept Tom in. He wanted to stay in, but there was a legitimate concern. Tom's a fine dining guy, and the idea of creating or overseeing a menu for a coffee shop was not something that he felt he did not feel it was the right thing to do. Principally because he would not be able to quality control anything. So he helped us with the menu. He helped us. He advised us on some things. He did lots of tastings with us. But when we opened New York, Tom did create a signature sandwich. And don't you know, what goes around comes around. It is called the Tribbiani, and it is a New York Italian hero on semolina bread with sharp provolone cheese and good Italian charcuterie that he's proud to eat. He's proud to serve it. We've got he spent the morning with us with Good Morning America and made it on the air, shared it. So Tom's still a valuable contributor to the outfit.
That sandwich sounds fantastic, by the way.
It's pretty darn good. It's pretty darn good. And all of our food, truthfully, is sort of best in class. We don't want to be a restaurant, right? We want to be a cafe.
Yeah.
And so when we're running this thing the way it should be run, it is going to have a 3-part opportunity: the morning part, day part, evening part. We are on the way to getting a liquor license for the New York location. We fully expect that the espresso martini business will be bustling in our location. And we expect good things out of that as well. Yeah.
Okay, so location number 3, is that in New York? Or I'm going to guess and say I would do Vegas or maybe Los Angeles. But any thoughts?
We have lots of good options right now because of the early success in New York. We also recognize that there's Times Square is Times Square, so we are not looking to replicate everything about that adventure. That store is very merch heavy, right?
Okay. Got it.
And so, and because that's the nature of Times Square, right? It just is. So we know that we have to be less dependent on merch sales and more dependent on food and beverage sales in the next location. We do have a vision for the development that includes classically hub and spoke, right? Stores that you would probably call flagship stores and stores that you would call satellite stores. We do have a vision, of triple figure kind of store development over the next 10 years. Over the next 2 years, we really do want to open 10 stores. We still are, what I also learned in this venture is when you start a business like this, you don't ever stop raising money. So we continue to raise money. We know that before a true venture capital fund will really consider a big investment, usually there's a 5-store proof of concept minimum. So as we raise money to get to that number, all of those folks, who said call us when you have 5 stores, you'll be hearing from us. But look, the real estate community certainly understands the value of it. Our best neighbors we know are going to be retailers, and we're going to be able to be a traffic driver, I think, wherever we go. So we really do want to find locations that are where we're not breaking new ground, right? But where we're enhancing some already good performing retail. We'll take chances. Here at the EEE conference where we are, there are a number of municipalities and regional economic development authority folks here, and all of them are talking to us about Central Perk because they envision in their towns Central Perk becoming what it is to people, right? Which is the neighborhood hang, and they like the intellectual property. It's a very comfortable property.
Phil, our time is just blasted by, and every time I talk to you, I feel like we're just scratching the surface, and it's like, whoop, time's over.
Well, we are in Hollywood, James, and that's just the way Hollywood goes.
Right. Fast-paced Hollywood world. What's your favorite thing on the menu?
The Tribbiani.
Right.
But I will also tell you that there is a pretzel croissant.
Nice.
That I'm not a croissant guy. I try to watch what I eat because I get prone to being chubby. But that pretzel croissant, I just can't. I can't go in a store without sneaking one.
Oh, man, I need to try that. That sounds awesome. All right, Central Perk Coffee Company, check it out. They're open and growing. And I want to give a special thanks to the organizers of the Entertainment Experience Evolution. That's the Interface Conference Group, which is a division of France Media. That's where we're recording today's interview at. If you want to hear more interviews, audio retail tours, and new research insights, you can subscribe to Where We Buy on the iPhone podcast app. We're on Spotify. Wherever you get your podcast, just search for Where We Buy. Or you can find us on the web at wherewebuy.show. And that's a wrap.